more people work in small business than in any other sector of our economy. It provides more jobs. That means more income, more opportunity, more security for Victorians in any other part of our economy. So we have a scheme here which, as I said, we have been calling for rent relief for small businesses for some time. So we don't object to the structure of the scheme. What we do object to is the lack of detail in it. And what we really object to is the unfairness of a government that has been ripping money out of the property sector hand over fist through increased land taxes and is failing to do its bit to make sure that the burden is shared evenly, fairly.
The commercial tenancy relief scheme for me was probably the biggest thing that businesses told me they valued. JobSeeker and the commercial tenancy relief scheme, they are amongst the biggest costs. Rent and staff wages are amongst the biggest costs for many businesses. This scheme is available to those businesses with a turnover of less than 50 million. And we expect, as the Minister for Small Business said at the press conference the other week, we expect that the landlords will provide a proportionate rent reduction proportionate to the turnover loss of that business. So, for example, a business with a turnover of 40% of pre-pandemic levels can only be charged 40% of its rent.
It is absolutely frightening what's happening to the shopping strips in all our country towns. So on this particular bill, yes, we welcome the support for small business and landlords, but again, the government has actually spending other people's money and claiming credit for it rather than actually putting their hand in their own pocket to help these businesses.
I want to thank our landlords. And I want to thank our tenants as well, because I think in general our landlords and tenants have worked together. They have understood that we need to be together to get through this. And for the most part, they have all done their bit.
Victorian small business owners are twice as likely to have remortgaged their family home, that's 10% of small business owners, versus a national average of 5%. 60% of small business owners have been forced to dip into their savings, and about the same number have cut back on household expenditure. 1 out of 3 small business owners in Victoria is not optimistic about the future. This is not a picture of a sector that is rosy. It's a picture of a sector that's suffering, that's in hardship. But as the Leader of the Nationals said in his contribution, we're now 18 months in to this pandemic. Why is it that when the Leader of the Opposition and I called for tenancy support and landlord support on the 27th of July, that we needed to make that call? Why hadn't the government got its act together and had a plan before then?
The proposed scheme to be introduced through regulations will provide support to small businesses with a turnover under $50 million that have suffered a decline of at least 30% in their turnover. And without the JobKeeper program to provide that level of evidentiary support that was required in the previous program, the tenants will be able to just demonstrate their eligibility by providing a standard letter from their accountant.
We know that there's a hardship fund of $20 million incorporated in this, but is that enough? Who knows? The government, I'm sure, wouldn't have done the numbers. I don't know. They probably just made that up on the back of an envelope in the frantic rush to get this bill before the Parliament. So it's disappointing that we find ourselves in this situation and that we've got here a bill where the government says, trust us, we'll work it out.
One of the challenges prior to lockdown, and I guess was certainly exacerbated, was the fact that much of the vacancy rates was caused by the simple fact that rents were too high for commercial tenants, and there was certainly landlords were actually leaving them vacant because to offer a discounted or lower rent would actually then devalue their property, and so you had these ridiculous circumstances where it was actually better for a landlord to leave their shop front vacant. I'm glad to have been informed that many landlords are now, because of the pandemic, coming to the party and offering reduced rents and much more flexible arrangements for their tenancy arrangements. The Greens support this bill, but as I said, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done for the long term.
The key to getting our small businesses back, yes, we're going to provide this support for landlords and tenants through this scheme, but the best way that we can have to come out of COVID and have our small businesses thriving is to get more people vaccinated, and particularly in our regions.